What's up guys, Sean Nalawani, SeanNal.com, and in this video today I'm going to be discussing what I believe is the single biggest ripoff currently in the bodybuilding supplement industry. Now, there are a lot of supplements out there that are ineffective, a waste of money, some that are potentially unsafe, but the reason why this particular supplement is now number one on my list is because of its ineffectiveness relative to how popular it is, meaning that it almost certainly isn't going to help you build muscle. It could even be counterproductive, as I'll talk about in a second, and yet millions and millions of dollars are spent on it. Supplement companies continue to aggressively market it, and it's one of the most common supplements that people use nowadays. Now, because it's so popular, I already know that this video is going to get a bunch of dislikes from people out there who believe that they're benefiting from it, or who have a sort of emotional investment in it because of all the money they've spent on it over the years. But when it all comes down to it, my only goal here is to help out my viewers and subscribers, to give the objective facts, and to make your fitness program as efficient and as cost-effective as possible. I have no emotional or financial stake in this advice. I'm basing this on concrete research and on firsthand experience. So it is what it is. So without further ado, the single biggest bodybuilding supplement ripoff right now, in my opinion, are BCAAs, branched chain amino acids. BCAAs from food sources are useful, but BCAAs in supplemental form are not. As a standalone supplement, they don't build muscle, they're not cheap, and millions of people continue to purchase them every month. Right now, as we speak, somewhere out there is a bodybuilding newbie being convinced by a supplement store salesman to spend $40 on watermelon flavored BCAAs that he really doesn't need. It's very sad. I actually did a video on this last year where I broke down step by step exactly why I don't think they're necessary. And that's because as long as you're eating enough total dietary protein for the day as a whole, so around 0.8 grams per pound of body weight, you're already getting all of the branched chain amino acids that you need to maximize protein synthesis. And just dumping more BCAAs on top of that isn't gonna give you any sort of super benefit. There's a finite cap on how much muscle your body can build in a given day. There's a finite cap on how much protein synthesis can be elevated, and you can reach that cap just through regular food alone. And once that cap is reached, additional supplementation is futile at that point. It doesn't do anything except make your bank account smaller, basically. Now, the reason why I'm revisiting this topic again is because of a new meta-analysis that was published recently, which basically just means combining the data from multiple studies to reach an overall conclusion. And not surprisingly, it basically confirms what I've been saying on this and what a lot of other people have been saying as well, which is that BCAAs essentially have no anabolic properties when you take them in isolated form as a supplement. And not only that, but this analysis actually shows that it's possible that they might even produce muscle loss. That would be to a very small degree, but it is interesting regardless. And I'll link this in the description box below if you do want to check it out. To put it in simple terms, L-leucine, which is one of the 3 BCAAs and is usually treated as the most important one because it's the main trigger of protein synthesis. L-leucine does trigger protein synthesis, but the problem is that without the other essential amino acids there, your body has no raw material to actually build new muscle mass. So taking BCAAs without other amino acids is kind of like a construction team showing up to build a house, but not having any tools or bricks or wood to actually build it. Nothing useful is going to come out of that. Or the other thing that might happen is that protein synthesis gets stimulated in a given muscle, but since there's no other amino acids around to be used for growth, the body will actually break down other muscle groups to get the amino acids that it needs. So maybe you take your BCAAs and you train your chest, protein synthesis is stimulated in your pecs, and then your body breaks down muscle in your shoulders to get the amino acids that it needs to build your chest. So if you're taking pre-workout or intra-workout BCAAs in isolation every time you train, you're probably just running in circles because it's not giving you a net gain in muscle growth. And for that reason, at this point, I don't even recommend taking BCAAs for fasted training anymore. I just don't see what use they really have. And to quote the research, it says, "We can conclude from these 2 studies that BCAA infusion not only fails to increase the rate of muscle protein synthesis in human subjects, but actually reduces the rate of muscle protein synthesis and the rate of muscle protein turnover. The catabolic state was not reversed to an anabolic state in either study. So if anything, if you're wanting to train fasted or you're doing intermittent fasting, you're actually better off to just ditch the BCAAs altogether and to consume a blend that contains all of the essential amino acids instead. But if you do that, then you're technically not training fasted anymore anyway, and so you might as well just have a small serving of lean protein or a scoop of whey protein or some other protein powder. Now, some people are gonna say, why not just take the BCAAs and have them alongside regular dietary protein, because that way your body gets the increase in protein synthesis from the BCAAs and then has the extra amino acids that it needs to use for muscle growth. But the thing is, if you're eating regular dietary protein to begin with, you're already getting the BCAAs that you need from that. And so a BCAA supplement still isn't going to be necessary. So basically, either you take BCAAs in isolation and you stimulate protein synthesis but get no actual growth, since there's no other amino acids there to build the muscle, or at worst, you stimulate breakdown in other muscle groups to get the amino acids, or you just eat regular whole food protein and you get the BCAAs to stimulate protein synthesis from that, plus the other amino acids that you need to build muscle, and your other muscle groups are left alone as well. I think that's pretty clear and a pretty obvious choice. So the bottom line here is that based on the research and just the logic behind all of this, BCAAs don't appear to have any real use for muscle building purposes. And at worst, they could even be very slightly counterproductive. If you're eating enough total protein for the day as a whole, then you're already getting more than enough to maximize protein synthesis. And if you're training fasted or doing intermittent fasting, taking BCAAs in isolation doesn't really seem to have any use either. Now, I know there's going to be a bunch of comments where people basically say that I'm full of shit because they use BCAAs and it worked for them. But I just want to point out that even if BCAAs were theoretically effective, the benefits would be small enough to where it would be very hard, if not impossible, to clearly notice them and to be able to pin down that it was specifically the BCAAs that were actually improving your results. Okay, muscle growth is a very slow and very gradual process, and any supplement that improves muscle growth slightly over the long term, it's going to be almost impossible to isolate its effectiveness unless you're living in a vacuum and you're tracking every single variable of your lifestyle, your training, nutrition, and your supplementation. For example, let's assume a realistic rate of muscle growth for a relative beginner of around 1 pound per month. And let's say BCAAs increased your gains by 20%, which is hugely generous to begin with. That would mean that over the course of 10 months, you'd gain an extra 2 pounds of muscle. So with BCAAs, you'd get 12 pounds of muscle growth, and without them, you would get 10 pounds. There's no realistic way that you're gonna be able to specifically track that or know that the BCAAs were responsible or know that the gains you got were greater with them than they would have been without them, especially if you're a beginner and especially considering all the different factors that are involved in your program. And then if you're more advanced, muscle growth is happening even more slowly at that point, in which case it's gonna be virtually impossible to decipher. So for that reason, when it comes to supplements like this, you have to rely on logic and reasoning and concrete research to make these sort of supplement decisions, because the effects are so small and so long-term. And so if you did take something like BCAAs and in a few weeks or even a couple months, you think you've gained more muscle, there's virtually a 100% chance that that is just a simple placebo effect. It's in your head, it's not based in reality, it's placebo. Supplements that have more immediate effects like creatine because of the water weight gain or certain pre-workout compounds that work within 30 minutes of taking them, those you could pin down more accurately, but BCAAs are not something you're gonna notice from week to week. So doing proper research is gonna be your best bet here. But anyway, guys, that's pretty much all I wanted to say. BCAAs are hugely popular, but that doesn't mean they're effective. There are tons of things the masses can be influenced to follow that turn out to be incorrect, and the evidence overwhelmingly shows that BCAAs are most likely a waste of money as long as you're eating enough dietary protein. A few basic supplements can be useful to maximize your overall progress. Protein powders, creatine, fish oil, certain vitamins and minerals, certain pre-workout compounds, but BCAAs just aren't one of them, and I'd highly encourage you to save your money because it could be put to much better use. So I hope you guys found this advice helpful. If you appreciate this no-nonsense, science-based approach when it comes to building muscle and losing fat, then you can check out my complete body transformation blueprint by clicking the icon up at the top of the screen here, or by heading over to btblueprint.com using the link in the description box. That program will give you all the tools you need to optimize your results, the workouts, the meal plans, the supplement guides, and one-on-one coaching. If you enjoyed the video, as always, make sure to hit the like button, leave a comment, and subscribe to stay up to date on future videos. You can check out my official blog over at seannall.com for all of my latest updates. And you can follow me on Instagram and Facebook if you aren't already. The links for that are also in the description box. Thanks for watching, guys, and I'll see you in the next video.